All right, guys, like we've been talking about all episode, joined for the first guest of the year, Mr. Kevin Harvick joins us right here on Stacking Pennies. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. I promised you I was going to do it for a few years, and it just took a little bit of time to actually make it happen. So here we are.
Well, better late than ever, because also we had to get you on before you just pulled the pin and moved to Italy and raced with your kid.
Well, I did pull the pin. I have one more year of full-time NASCAR Cup Series racing. I shouldn't say full-time. At the end of the year, I'm done Cup racing. That was one of the things that I wanted to accomplish, was not to retire, then unretire, then come back and run 3 or 4 races. What that legacy is when we get to the end of 2023, that's what it is. So, we've tried to develop a great plan to show appreciation to the sponsors and the team members and the people and the fans for everything that everybody's done. But as a business owner, when I owned teams, if I would have got up on the stage and said, I'm done at the end of 23 and hadn't told anybody, I'd have been in big trouble. So, for us, this has really been a plan that's kind of taken place over the last year and a half, and took a while to put it all together. Do
you feel like you're at a place where, like, you're looking forward to it?
I am. And I think for me, it's really about that competitive mindset. I've been doing this for 23 years, but as you know, I'm heavily involved in just the day-to-day of whether it's the sponsors or communicating with Rodney, the team, and just what's going on and the sport and everything that comes with that. And it's to the point where I need some flexibility to spend more time with my kids, to be able to go watch Keelan race more, to watch Piper decide what she wants to do and how she grows up, to help Delana make sure that they do what they're supposed to do in school. They go to school upstairs, so you wind up being the principal as well. But I'm at a point where I'm fortunate to be able to have accomplished a lot of things in the sport. I feel really comfortable with where I'm at as far as what I've been able to do. And there's just other things that I want to do. I still want to race. I love being a part of the teams. Would love to look into trying to be more of a part of a team as we go forward. And I really want to spend more time with my kids. So we've restructured the business side of things with KHI Management. We'll open up some different businesses along the way. As you saw, we bought the part of the group that bought the Cars Tour, and being able to be a part of that, drive the car, race with the guys and gals that are in the tour. And I love racing, and there's no hiding from the fact that we are a racing family and have grown up around it, have been around it, and we'll fall into my grave a part of it. So that's just what we like to do. And we've talked about not doing this and not doing that with our kids, but here we are.
Let's go down that path a little bit. I want to talk about the Cars Tour stuff. Super exciting news there with the group, with Jeff and Dale and you and Justin taking control of the late model stock touring series. We'll get to that in a minute, but I'm interested about Keelan. My boy Keelan is going overseas. He's over in Italy at the moment. But I wanted to kind of rewind it a bit to your relationship with your dad. You talked about it on the Dale Jr. Download. You had some great stories. And before we jumped on, I was talking a story about how my dad knows just the right buttons to push to get the most out of you. And you had a good story, and I had to tell you to pause it. So tell all the listeners that story you're about to uncork with the list.
Yeah, well, I think your dad and my dad were probably very similar. As I look back at it now, you're like, well, he was probably right about that, and he was probably right about that, and probably should have done this that way. But anything I could do to not do it that way was way more fun and seemed way more acceptable in my mind as to what was right. But the story that we were talking about was, I guess it would have been, I don't know, probably 94, 95, somewhere in there. So at that particular point, my dad was a fireman, and he would go to the fire station, and part of what we did from the time that I had a checkbook from the time I was in 4th grade. Most people probably don't know what a checkbook is. I'm sorry. But anyway, I had to, it started with simple things like that. It was a checkbook, and then you had to go to work during the summer. And so I cleaned pools and painted fences, and that migrated into having all of our own stuff on the race team. So then I started working at the shop, after school and during the summer. And as I got out of school, I guess I was just out of school. So he would leave the list on the side of the car, and I had myself and one of my friends that worked at the shop every day. And we liked to work different hours than my dad because the morning was too early. So I would, come in, and the first thing we would do is go to lunch. with everybody, and then we would work into the night and into the morning, and then we'd come back the next day and start at lunch again.
Yeah.
That was not my dad's schedule, and that frustrated him. But we always, for the most part, what we thought was done, we thought we would get the list done, whether it was to his liking or not. So anyway, one day he came home from the fire station, and he looked in the shop, and we had just got there, and he looked at the car, and he said the car was up on jack stands, and it was completely done. We had scaled it. We'd taken everything off the car because I'm sure we had other things that we wanted to go do at night over the weekend before the race. And he was like, nope, you didn't do everything. Took the right front suspension off the car, cussed all the way out of the shop, threw the upper, spindle, lower,
hub,
everything in the back of the truck, left.
And left.
Says, you're not racing tonight. I was like, well, we're not racing tonight. And my buddy looked at me and he said, well, we got 3 more cars in here. Why don't we just take the suspension off the car over here?
Great idea.
I'm like, you know what? At that, we're gonna race the car.
How old were you?
I think I was 17.
Okay.
18. And I said, we're gonna race the car. So we take the suspension off. We put everything on the car. We load it in the trailer. We push it in the truck. We get to the racetrack, and we're like, yep, we're gonna show him tonight. He probably won't even know we raced. So go out there, qualify, trophy dash, put it in trophy dash, lap 1 of the trophy dash, right front hub brakes.
Oh, no.
Oh, God.
Into the fence.
Poetic justice.
At that point, we are loading the car up, and we are taking the car back to the shop because we're going to fix it. So we fixed it up the best that we could.
Before he found out.
Yeah, he knew.
Yeah.
He knew before we even got out of the shop probably. But
what was that dreaming like?
it was bad for a few weeks.
Was it?
Yeah, it was a bad deal.
That's the tough part, I think, racing with your dad, right? Like, as much as you do it together, at times it also drives a wedge in between you. Oh, I know Randy will call me and be like, you see lap 133, Corey missed the turn 3. What are they doing, And I'm like, well, why don't you call him, Because it does. As much as racing with your dad builds a bond, it also sometimes pushes you away from each other. And I find myself, I'm nervous if Harper crew on a race to, turn off the competitive side and just be a dad and not fall into, what Mile Man did, just chewing my ass at the racetrack. How do you balance that as far as when it's time to be a dad, when it's time to be a mentor, and when it's time to be a driver coach, but also when it is time to give a constructive chewing?
Well, I definitely give the constructive chewing. So, I think for me, it got to a point with my dad where I didn't speak to him for 10 years, 15 years. So, it was big wedge as you look at that because it just got so ugly. But there were a lot of things that were right as well, as far as how he had to deal with things and the way he would push you and the barriers that pushed you beyond and the things that he made you do. And I think for me, I'm pretty strict with Keelan as far as being responsible for the things that he does, and sometimes it's a little bit too far. But I think we've found a really good balance. I found a great kid to help me that helps from the coaching standpoint. And I remember this conversation like it was yesterday with Jeff Burton. He's like, hey, I'm going to give you some advice. He's like, you need to make sure that you coach through the coach. So I'll let things go. I like being there. He likes me being there, and we have a good time. And when it's finally to the point of stepping in and giving that chewing, I'll step in and give that chewing. And when because there are so many more things to learn other than go fast, turn left, go fast, turn right, brake, gas. Racing is there's so many valuable life lessons that people can learn in this sport that go over, because it is a business. It does teach you have to be very dedicated to what you do to be able to do it well. And those are hard things for people and parents outside of the sport to really understand, how to push their kids without thinking that they're pushing them too far. What is too far?
Right.
How do you know what's far enough to push your kid unless you push them too far?
Yeah.
How do you know if it's going to affect them unless you get right up to that edge? Because in today's world, and especially in racing, you're talking about just small increments of time, but a lot of that can be overcome up here. And I think that the mental aspect of it and the thinking aspect of it is very important for the kids to understand that there is a huge responsibility with being a part of the process. And how do you outthink them? Because you're most of the time you're not going to have the fastest car, and you're not going to be in position to win unless you are smart enough to take your fast car and put it in position to win and not make any mistakes. But when you have a mediocre car, how do you put yourself in a position to be a winner and be in position at the end of the race? And that's by outthinking them and outsmarting them and out-detailing them and getting more out of the situation and getting more out of your people. So it's important for him to understand the workload. It's a very technical sport now with all of the data and things that go with making the car go fast. And, a lot of the kids don't understand that at an early age, and I think that's important. So we've kind of reconstructed our whole life. Before COVID, we didn't even race. He'd never raced a lap in his life. He got bored sitting on the simulator and said, let's go to the go-kart track. And since that day, we have raced like animals.
I was going to say, the fire hose is turned on right now.
Yeah. And, I think for me, it's all about, I think one of the things that happens in sports in general, and especially in our country, the kids win too much. And being able to just say, okay, we're going to change the plan right here today. And from today on, you're not racing that anymore. You're going to go race this. And that's how we wound up in Europe, because he started winning here, and I was panicking. I'm like, oh my God, we got to race all these kids again next year. And there's no way he's going to learn what he needs to learn next year. So we started the legend car stuff. We sent him to Europe so that we could get that fleet restructured. And the last race of the season had 123 karts in his class, 35 countries. But the culture that comes with traveling across the world and being in a different country and hearing a different language, and it's sink or swim, right? But you're also sending them and culturing them for life and being able to experience things that hopefully he'll remember for the rest of his life. So that's a very complicated question, and I put a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of thought process in to what's too hard, what's too far, but we push him.
How much of that, like, you're a structured guy?
Yeah.
How much of it do you have plotted out where you want him to go? If it's, I think there was a clear-cut path in America to NASCAR, but I think now even IndyCar is more desirable when you look at guys going through that, and then also F1, the door's wide open. So how much of that do you look at as making opportunities and also taking opportunities?
Well, there's never anything bad about more people knowing your name.
Yeah.
And I think as you go and race around the world, you realize that the racing circle is not as big as you think it is, and there are still people over there. It's just like Haas, right? So you've got Gene Haas and you've got Gunther. They're a part of the F1 team. Well, when you know them, and then all of a sudden you go over and you realize, well, Max Pappas. Well, Max knows this guy, and this guy knows that guy, and so as Delaney and I talked about it, there's really nothing bad about sending Keelan to Europe to race because of all the cultural things that you can learn for life. You get to race against different kids. You don't know what the path will be by the time he gets there. There's nothing, if he goes down the NASCAR path, there's nothing any different that we were going to do other than we tried to make it more competitive that we would be doing differently here. You're still teaching him the oval stuff here. And he's only 10, and we represent Brent Cruz as well. And the one thing that I have learned with Brent, he's kind of at an age where he's hit this roadblock of options on the NASCAR side. So he's done well in the Trans Am thing. He's got the midgets and obviously the Chili Bowl open things up. For the younger kids, you can go race the sprint car. But if you're gonna go down the NASCAR road, once you get to the trucks, and really even into ARCA, you have some limitations from an age standpoint. So we held Keelan back before he even started school because his birthday is in July. And I don't think there's really any hurry, because what difference does it make if he gets there and he's 19 or he's 22? What's the difference? Because every kid has a different mental capacity of the things that they can absorb and the things that they can do. And we've tried not to, obviously we've put him in good environments to race, but we've tried not to, like with his go-kart, we don't have a fleet of badass motors. We go to the engine guy and we say, hey, we just want to get on the rental program, because he has to learn how to sink or swim, right? And,
Yeah.
and you can't just go out there, and the mistake that a lot of these people make is they wind up with the best motor and the best car, and they go all the way through late models, and they don't ever run 10th.
Mm-hmm.
They always run first, and then they get to Xfinity and Cup, and they don't know how to pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only do they not know how to pass, but they don't know how to race, and they don't know how to communicate. And so you see a lot of those kids that dominate up until that point that just kind of go away when they get into trucks and Xfinity. So we've tried to do it respectably, and I say that by doing the right things without all the super special stuff, because it's just not going to be that way.
My old man wouldn't let me start where I qualified until I was after late models. I would get so mad.
I got the best story. I got the best story
Give it
about
to
that. So we come in from qualifying one day at GoPro, and Keelan, I think he qualified 4th or 5th or 6th, and it was like it was a race where I expected him to go qualify on the pole, win the race, and that was the expectation of that day. And you can, as a kid, you can just be a little bit cocky. And he came off the scales, and we put the cart on a stand, and I'm like, what was that? I said, that was terrible. And he looked at me, and he puts his helmet in the seat, and he said, Dad, it's qualifying. It doesn't matter. I said, oh, really? Okay. So I went to the race director, and I said, hey, can you disallow his time? He said, what do you mean disallow his time? I said, give him no time. I said, we are DQ'd, no time. And we get to the grid. He said, why are we starting in the back? I said, you told me qualifying didn't matter. And so he had to start in the back. And we got to the next race, and he started in the back again. He said, well, I didn't finish here. I said, well, you said starting in the back. You said qualifying didn't matter, so just start in the back, big boy, and show me exactly why it doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter, just drive up there and win. So that was
he learned his lesson pretty quick.
He doesn't talk about the qualifying not mattering anymore.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. Yeah, I think Dad's motive behind it was to teach you how to pass, and he just knew that Rick Hendrick wasn't sitting in the stands at Hickory, watching you win a late model race. But he would frustrate me so bad. But
you ever see any of your late model stats that pop up in the
No, I don't. It's bizarre.
Nobody asked for them.
No,
when you went to
cares.
get your cup job, they don't matter.
No.
That's one thing I try to explain to parents. I'm like, nobody cares about where you finished in your go-kart. Nobody cares about your late models. Nobody cares about any of that stuff. Nobody even cares about ARCA. Nobody cares where you finished.
With that being said, if you have a 10-year-old kid right now that you can't fly him to Europe, what do you do in the States, in your locals, in the Southeast region, to prepare your kid to try to get a shot?
I think it's really, what do you want to accomplish? If you live here, you've got a lot of options. If you want to go be a midget racer or a sprint car driver, or
go to Millbridge.
Yeah, you go to Millbridge. If you want to be an asphalt oval racer, I think that the legend cars are. I think that there's a great path. I don't think people spend enough time there. I think they want to jump in a late model too early, and then they crash them, and they run over each other, and they're just not prepared properly to be able to go out on the racetrack and race where they want to race. So I think that preparing and succeeding at the level that you're at is important. If you can't succeed at the level that you're at, you need to go find a better situation and be successful at go-karts or legend cars or whatever it is, and before you go to the next level, because it's not going to get easier.
I mean, hell, you look at Jonathan Davenport, right? He was an ASA guy, right? He was an asphalt ASA guy, and there's so many routes now to make money racing cars.
Yeah.
But Brent Cruz, man, that's interesting you bring that up. And you look at guys like Brent Cruz, he's only 4 years older than Keelan, right? I saw a stat, he's the youngest guy to ever make the Chili Bowl A main.
Yeah.
But, like, at what point you look at Ty Gibbs and how fast he's been in the Xfinity Series, how quick he came up. At what point does age, like you said, become a distraction? Like, does it really matter if you're the youngest guy?
I don't think so. I want, if I'm going to walk through the whole process with Keelan, I would pay more attention to what he's doing in the division that he's at and how he's processing things mentally. Like, how many things can we throw at him and he can process them? He's pretty good at processing things mentally because we throw so much at him. Like, when I'm around him and we're talking and testing and data, like, it's constantly, what do you think about this? Look at this. Why'd you do this? Where'd you go? Why? What happened here? And then it's, whether it's the data or the video, just constantly try to shove stuff at him because I want to see how much he can process. Because in this deal on the Cup side, and even not so much on the Xfinity side, but on the Cup side, it's all about how you can compartmentalize everything and how you can take the negativity and how you can deal with the media and how you can deal with the fans. If you're going to look at social media, you better have a pretty big mental capacity as far as how you digest all that stuff and the proper way to think about it and how you take it. You know, how do I make you realize that you are a part of the process? But if everybody on that team doesn't believe in you, you're in big trouble. Because if they have one doubt in their mind that you're not giving it all that you have and you're not as committed as they are, you're going to lose them. And that's the one thing that has made our team so special on the 4-car is every guy believes that the other guy is giving 100% and they never show up unprepared. You cannot show up unprepared or you will be left out of that group in a big hurry, because it's so important to realize as a driver you're just a little bitty piece of that. But you steer the whole ship.
Oh, yeah. You're the quarterback.
You are the leader.
With the things that you say and the things that you say, okay, that was better or that was worse. And I always tell Keelan this, it's better to say, I don't know, because when you say that was better, then all of a sudden it's going to be one step further. And then it's going to be one step further and then another step because they think you like it. And to me, that's you look at Roush Racing a number of years ago when Matt Kenseth left and Mark Martin left and
Carl.
Jeff Burton left and Carl left. You had all these leaders to say, guys, we need to stop. And this is not better. We need to go back 3 steps. Remember when? This is where we were, and this is what we need to go back to, and we need to abort on everything else. You can just get so far down this path. And, you know, I think a lot of guys don't realize how impactful the things that they say on the radio or about their car or the feedback that they have matter.
You're 23 years into this thing. How much different have you changed over those?
Oh, man. When I look back at RCR and everything that happened in the beginning, so I went to RCR and it was, okay, we're going to build 2 Xfinity teams. Every team, everything about those teams was built from scratch from the very beginning, just like the 4-car was when I went to Stewart-Haas Racing. I knew every guy in the shop. We ate together, we raced together, we tested together, we flew together, we drove together, we went and did things outside of racing together. And then Earnhardt died, and I went to the 3-car. Well, I had been testing the 3-car all at the end of 2000. But, you know, I think as you look at having to race that car with that group of guys, those weren't a bad group of guys, but they were built for Earnhardt. They were his age. They were his mentality. They all believed in what they believed together. And all of a sudden, I went, bloop, right in the middle of this group that was the same age as my dad.
Yeah.
And all the guys that I had come with, through the Busch ranks were not a part of it. Well, the first year I think we raced 69 or 70 races between the Cup Series. We ran the whole Busch schedule, and it didn't really show up that year because nobody really knew what was going on. We were just racing. Nobody was going to say anything about anything because we just wanted RCR to survive. Well, in 2002, we showed up, and we weren't running good. And for me, I had to start answering the questions. Well, Dale did it this way. Well, Dale did it that way. Well, this is what we think. This is what that we think. And I was like, that's not the way I want to do it. And all of a sudden, you started to have some friction. And the friction was changing the crew chief. Well, then, you're undoing all these things that Dale had built within RCR, and all of a sudden you had this chatter in the background. Oh, he's a pain in the ass. He's a pain in the ass. And then it just got more defensive as you had the new guard versus the old guard. So Gil Martin and Todd, Todd Barrier were both my crew chiefs, and they were both from the Busch shop that we had built. And slowly a lot of the people kind of migrated differently. But I think for me, if I could go back and do all that again, you could probably could have made that whole situation way better by being the communicator and understanding things the way that you understand them now. But I would have never been able to understand the way things that I do now if it wasn't for changing teams. Because the first thing that Rodney Childers said was, not going to do that. You're not going to run into cars. You're not going to scream. You're not going to yell. You're not going to do this, or I'm just not coming. And I knew that it needed to be right.
Yeah.
When I went to Stewart-Haas Racing. So he was really big in saying, hey, man, you need to just – I know who you are because it took me a year or so, maybe longer than that, to convince him to come to Stewart-Haas Racing. And from that point on, I realized I'm a part of this process. I can't just be the that walks in and out and says –
make her fast.
You're stupid. Our cars are terrible. This scream and yell and this and that.
Yeah.
That isn't going to fix anything. And I think if you had the same mentality that I have now, being able to go into Richard's office and say, I think we need to do this. I think we need to do that. And you get the right person in there and you do it more appropriately. You just have way less friction. But it took changing teams and Rodney's conversations to be able to do that. And from that day forward, you just realize, I'm like, man, there were a lot of mistakes made from the communicator standpoint. And being that quarterback, you can't lead by destruction, and it just doesn't work.
Dude, being a pit crew guy, right? There was points in time, especially the end of the 29 era, where it was like I would listen to the radio and be like, oh man, I don't know if I ever want to change tires for that guy. Is there ever but it also, I was like, all right, listen to that, and how do I deal with that when I want to be in the situation? That was when I was still trying to get on a cup car. I want to be in the situation where I'm going to be on a cup team, and it's going to come when you're on a cup team, especially on pit road. It comes with losing races when you're on a team that wins a lot. Yeah. There was the 48 was always a good team, but they always got bashed because they were always in the top 5. When you're running 15th and you make a mistake, nobody knows.
Yeah.
But when you're running for the win every week, it shines. Is there ever a time where you feel like you crossed the line and chewed somebody's ass too much, or is there ever a time where you wish you kind of went a little bit harder?
Yeah, I don't know that I ever wished I went harder. I never fell short on that one. And I think that
where do you think that comes from? Of I chalk that up to being you feel like the world is watching, and it's hot, and you're isolated, and you only see the picture from the windshield. That's usually when I get the most mad. And
there's some of it that comes from that Bakersfield shop getting his chewed by his dad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I would tell you that it's more of an excuse now when I look back at it, because there's really no reason for it. There's really nothing that you're going to fix in those particular moments, right?
Yeah.
If you walk in Monday morning and you banged your fist on the table or threw a glass against the wall or ripped the TVs off the wall, nobody'd ever even know, and you'd get way more accomplished. And I in my mind, it was, we just have to raise hell in order to get something changed, because they'll get tired of listening to it. And that was it was just so much chaos to be able to deal with. And as we got the 4-car started, it was okay. We can't deal with that chaos. That is just it's a complete distraction from everything that you're doing, and there's nothing that's going to come out of it other than destruction. And so it took Rodney really making me realize all those things, and you hear the stories like that of, hey, I can't, I think he's nervous about coming in and working on the car because of the fact that, this or that, and being able to understand, what was happening within the walls, because it was just all way too slow for me. And that was really the things that were frustrating to me when I was at RCR, was it all just happened way too slow. And for me, I thought that if you just made more noise, it would happen faster. But it was just always constant chaos. And then you had to answer it through the media, and the media and things were a lot different then. It was much harsher because of the fact that, there wasn't social media and things like that, because they would listen to the radio and they would really start to even push more of a wedge in there. But man, when I look back at the RCR days, there was a lot learned there. And I think in the beginning, taking over for Dale, being able to have the biggest press conference, have your biggest win, have all those things happen first.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so everything else was all the rest of that stuff has all been easy, because you had to do the really stressful hard ones the first year. and Richard and I, obviously we talk now and have a good relationship, and that's important to me. And the day I left, when I left, I went in and told him myself and sat at the table. It was the most nervous I'd ever been. But
hang on,
could have been.
Did you not book a room at the hotel down the street for a press conference?
No.
To announce the next team? You didn't do that?
No.
Did he take his watch off when you were telling him?
Yeah.
Like, hold on. Oh, I have to fight. I'm gonna have to fight this guy.
You actually sat down and told him face to face?
Told him face to face. Yeah, that's the proper way to do it.
It's bizarre.
How was that reaction?
I think he was. I know he was shocked that it had got to that point. And I think at that point it was a year and a half before I was leaving. So it was either if he wanted to not have me drive the car, then that's what we needed to do in order to get to the next opportunity, or we needed to work it out. And we worked it out. And I still hate the way that we had the little spat with Ty and things like that, but all on good ground now. And I think as you look back at it, it's good that we're on good ground. It's good that you understand and respect where each other was. I know he wanted to win as bad as I did, and I was just for me, I was young. I think we all could have handled it better, but I think I hold a lot of responsibility in being able to handle it better. But we also had a lot of success too, so it was. But we could have had a lot more.
It's interesting to me how quickly the sport changes, like especially relationships like that. Because I remember talking to Logano a couple years ago, and when he was doing marketing stuff and starting his own businesses, and he said that he leaned on you on a bunch of stuff, and I was like, holy shit, from Pocono, whatever it was, 13, 14 years ago to now, and the run-ins that you guys have had. But talking about it, I mean, he took over Tony's team with Zippy. You guys have a lot more in common than you think. So just you've gotten into it. I guess we could segue to this from that. You've gotten into it with a lot of guys throughout the years. Like, there's people today that are listening to the show that probably don't even know who Ricky Rudd is. Right? Yeah. Was there ever a time, because like I grew up in Blewitch Junkyard, short track racing. There was like a point in time where we were just going to fight and we'd end up racing, it seemed like. Yeah. Is there ever a time where you got in like a little too deep?
Can I tell you my favorite fight?
When you were fighting somebody?
Can I tell you my favorite?
Was there ever actually a fight though?
No. No. Well,
I mean, a fight for me is you wind up bloody and hurt and on
my
the ground.
favorite would have been if Kyle Busch didn't push your car out of the way.
I was mad that day.
That one was
rightfully so. But my favorite, I was probably, you'll know the year, you and Greg Biffle Busch race.
That was 2000. 2000?
No.
2001.
Yeah.
No, that was 2002. That was at the beginning of 2002.
So I was 11, so we were all in the MRO. Dad was racing. I was up in the MRO suite, and Biffle won. He spun you out, and you nose it in the fence, right? So I'm nose up against the glass watching Biffle, because I see you get out of your car and like find your way to victory lane, and you hopped over the deck lid of that thing and you grabbed a hold of Biffle.
Spider monkey.
You did spider monkey, dude. That image, I was up in the suite like, get him. Yes, I was like 11 years old. So that's my favorite Harvick scrap story.
So I would tell you this: when you're running bad, sometimes you got to have a show, right? And in our sport, you have to keep yourself relevant. And we did it by, when it wasn't going good, you did it by putting on a show, and you did it by winning Xfinity races or Busch races at the time.
Okay.
Those were the two things. I mean, when the Cup car wasn't running good, you had to keep yourself relevant. Right. So a lot of that was just a show.
I got a good one. So Dog, Kirk Almquist, right? He wasn't your car chief at the time, but he carried tires for you, and he's a California guy.
Yeah. One of my favorites.
Some gonna fight.
Oh yeah.
Right. So he was the one that was jumping on the 21 at Richmond, right? He was one. So fast forward, I'm changing tires on the 21. Bullens hires him to be our car chief. The Wood brothers have us up at the museum every year, like around Christmas, get the team together. Kirk walks in, hey, said, Len Wood looks at him and says, were you that boy that was jumping on the hood of my car?
Len told me.
Yes, sir. It was so awkward for like 2 seconds because they were so nice. Were you that boy that was jumping on the hood of my car? Yes, sir. He goes, funny how it all changes. And it was just so awesome to see that. But
that was the problem with that 29 car. I mean, to this day, I tell a lot of the kids, I'm like, you think 100,000 social media followers is going to make you run faster? You think all that controversy is going to make you better? What's it going to do? What's going to make you more valuable than anything? It's being the fastest guy there. and being the baddest race car driver there. You'll gain more followers, you'll gain more fans, but at that time when we didn't run good, it was all about chaos. We wanted to cause as much chaos as we could, and those guys, Big Mike, Dog,
Ratto, yeah. Barrier ain't scared either.
Barrier, I mean, those guys, they loved it. And that was probably bad for me because I knew that they loved it. And I had that same bond with those guys that I do with this particular team, but we were all just young and
it goes
rambunctious.
to the point of you being a leader, right? You were
Richard
rowdy,
loved
you were
to
ready to fight. Yeah.
Richard,
hold my watch.
Yeah, Richard was all, he was all in on just, it was take no and do everything you can do. And if you weren't going to win, and put on a show. Yeah. And putting on a show was as relevant as winning the race. In a lot of those cases, more talked about than winning the race. So understanding the publicity side of it and all the things that it took, because there were a lot of dry years, but you always knew our name.
Yeah.
Well, also you can sit here and think, well, that was young Kevin. That look in your eye when you and Chase got into it, Bristol, I thought you were going to kill somebody.
I have a bad temper.
It was different,
though. I was mad there.
It was different, though, because it was more like what are you not understand? Like, you were like, how do you not understand this? I'm trying to explain it to you. And you were. Yeah. It was more of a frustration than like, I'm just going to kick his ass.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of those instances, it's a lot like when we had KHI, every employee was different. So you had to handle each one of them different. And even with Rodney, like I beat the dash out of the car one day. I'm like, I want to see what the reaction is. This, they messed up a pit stop or whatever had happened that day, and I wasn't going to yell on the radio. So I just took steering wheel and I just popped the dash 3 or 4 times that day and knocked the gauges out of it.
After the race?
Not the right button to push. That was the wrong button to push. But so you have to push those buttons in order to see who each person is, and then you have a conversation that's very open. Very straightforward, very truthful, because they're mad and they want to get across to you, but I can still get across to them as well. And being able to understand people and push those buttons and not be afraid to push those buttons is really important, because otherwise you're tiptoeing around. You don't really know who the other guy is, and you have to be mad at each other a few times in order to understand where each other really stand on certain things.
1,000%. I mean, you don't win 60 cup races if you don't get the best out of your people. And I was going to ask you, out of those 60 wins, if you had, not the first one, because you said that one was the biggest one, if you had to take like 3, if you had to pick 3 that stand out to you.
Well, the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
And
if I haven't watched that in-car camera footage 10 times you were like 20th.
Dude, 32nd. I think we restarted 32nd.
With like 15 to go. It was unbelievable.
Well, then you got Kenseth jacked up at one point in the fence.
Yeah, so Kenseth was damn near spun out.
Yeah, that was a wild finish. Homestead, the championship race at Homestead, winning that race and winning the championship in the first year would probably go in front of the Daytona 500 and then the Daytona 500. So I would go first win, Homestead, Daytona 500, 2003 Brickyard 400.
Dude, I remember being so frustrated that year at Phoenix when you guys won to go to Homestead, because you guys were just kicking our every week, and then you guys won, and Cowboy Cerrone's out there like, burn it down.
Air guitar.
And then, and then your shot guy's like, oh, I believe that we won. I'm like, wish these guys would shut the up.
Yeah.
But you earned it. I mean, you were kicking our at the time, so
shoot.
That was a fun year for you guys for sure.
It was a fun year, and that year really started in 2013. Being able to go with the team, and NASCAR had that open test with all the different rules packages and things that they were going to run that year. So it was we knew right off the bat that we were fast. We had a lot of parts failures and a lot of things break and go wrong, and we just put it together at the end of the year. So that was one time that I did like the point structure. All the other years, we wound up not winning.
How much of this last one, of the last 36 races, 38, however many exhibition ones included, are you going to balance trying to savor the moment and also wanting to go in there and be a killer?
I like Dale Jr.'s theory, just the NFG tour. Like, you just go out there and
get after it.
You're in a unique situation. Like, you have a team, and like it showed last year, right? Storehouse wasn't running great. Yeah. Everybody thought you were done, down and out, and you pop off 2 wins, boom, boom, just like that, right? And if you don't have the fire at Darlington, there's a good chance you guys make a long playoff run and end up, giving you a shot to go to Phoenix. So you're in like minority of guys that are true championship contenders can be if everything plays out right in your final year.
Well, that's the goal, and I think as you end it, it's the way that you'd want to lay it out. You want to be competitive and you want to win races and try to be around for the championship at the end of the year. But there's just there's a lot that has gone into trying to plan it correctly so that we can have dealt with everything before we get started so that we can do that and try to be competitive and go to the racetrack and do the things that you want to do. Obviously, there will be some distractions and things, but we'll deal with that. It's not going to be that big a deal. But I think we've done the brunt of the work to start the season and kind of tell everybody the story. You'll see some other things as we go through the beginning of the year and just really just lay it all out there slowly and let people digest it. And I think we've done a good job with that.
Man, I can keep
Good
talking
stuff.
all day.
Oh yeah, there's a lot.
I know you got to go here before you got stuff. But let's talk about the car tour for a second.
Okay.
What was the reason you wanted to be a sanctioning body owner?
Well, I didn't really know I wanted to be a sanctioning body owner until I walked into Dale's motorhome. And
how did it come about?
I sent him a text and asked him a question about the Cars Tour, and the next thing I know, I'm sitting in his motorhome, and he's like, well, why don't you just do it with me? And I was like, okay, where do we start? I don't know. So that was at Bristol in April, and we just announced that in, I guess, the first week of January. So, I think for all of us, it's a very cool group of people. And when you look at myself and Dale, obviously, he's got the biggest stake in the Cars Tour with the team owner and understanding it. KHI from the management side, it's a great asset for us to have. It's a great excuse for me to go to the racetrack and drive the car and be a part of the races and try to help promote the series. You look at Justin, he thinks about things from such a different mindset, and Jeff he's great at taking all those ideas and helping us communicate and understand where we all are and has raced in the Cars Tour and has a lot of experience there too. So I can't wait to have those meetings, and I really can't wait to just kind of walk through the paddock and meet everybody, all the competitors, and do simple things. Like we were talking earlier, I had your dad over today working on my seat, and you see so much low-hanging fruit when you look at it from just a safety standpoint. Jack's obviously done a great job with making the tour successful and doing things like that, but just helping the guys understand the simple things. And really that's what I think we all want to accomplish is how do we keep it simple but bring enough attention to it and take that low-hanging fruit in the first couple years and try to put the tour on a platform to get the guys that race in that series the recognition that they deserve. It shouldn't have taken that long for people to recognize Josh Berry and give him the opportunities. And you look at Kvapil and the things that he did in the car this year. And there's all kinds of stories like that. But when you look in the Southeast and you look at late model stock racing, it's good. And when you look at all these other series that race around it, and I talked to Brent and some of the kids that have raced in the series, I said, well, what do you think? Well, I'd rather go run a Cars Tour race because I don't have to worry about getting a hack job run over for 10th place. And so the way that they've set the series up and the way that it's the reputation that it has of being good racing and officiated right and all the things that Jack has done with the series over the last several years, you have to be very careful about not doing too much because it doesn't need much, but our platform will hopefully help it initially and we can start to do a few things here and there to make that platform bigger.
So you posted you built a car, tested at Caraway.
Yeah.
Do you have some late model stock races earmarked? Maybe not this particular year, but next year you want to go to Martinsville and
I don't know.
You want to go to some big ones?
Well, I'd love to be able to have the car ready to actually race maybe at North Wilkesboro this year. I don't know if we'll actually do that or be in a position to be able to do that, but I think as you saw Dale race last year and you saw the things that he was able to do on the racetrack and really that's one reason why I built the car, because he's having so much damn fun. He's out there drinking beer after the race and having fun in the car.
Did you go to Wilkesboro?
I went to Wilkesboro, and
the cars race?
I went for the modified race, and I went to Florence for the late model stock race there.
Had the most fun at Wilkesboro I've ever seen. I built a street stock and raced a street stock there, and they were like parked at the fence, like climbing the fence.
Oh my God, I was having a time, dude. So fun.
It's interesting you bring up Florence, because like what you guys can bring to, like, when you look at like dirt late model racing, there's a bar set there with Lucas Oil Series and like World Outlaws that the local series kind of try to meet that bar.
Mm-hmm.
With late model stock racing, the Cars Tour is good, but it could be better. And your guys' leadership, a lot of these guys that don't have the racing experience that the ownership group, that like you guys do, just bought it. You go to a track like Florence, which is a great show, but it had some holes in the show where it could have definitely could have been run better. Yeah. So if you guys move that bar up 2 or 3 notches of, hey, this is how the Cars Tour does it, so that's how Hickory and Tri-County and, you know, Southern National, they're going to start doing it. You really have a great opportunity to move the whole sport forward.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just overthought.
Correct.
Let's just keep the format simple. Let's just make it simple. If we have to do inspection differently, whatever it is. I was there for the whole weekend because Keelan was racing his Legends car there, so I watched inspection, I watched the race, I watched the procedures, and obviously there were some things that happened that, you know, were a little bit here and there. But you're gonna have some of that, and I think that the more we can keep it simple and clean and organized and on time, like that's the biggest problem with dirt racing. I watched the Chili Bowl and I was like, my God, why don't we just run some of these heat races the day before?
And why don't they have starters?
Why don't they have starters? I don't get it.
That's a hill Corey's willing to die on.
Every single sprint car mechanic in the country jumps on my Twitter and accosts me because I
didn't even get to watch it.
I fell asleep.
I mean, most of the viewers didn't get to watch it. Yeah. So I think just priding ourselves in trying to be organized and on time I think that's just a great start. And because that's really where a lot of short track racing falls short. They aren't organized, and the bathrooms are all terrible. Every short track that I've been to, I'm like, man, why can't we let's just make a bathroom that doesn't have a galvanized steel urinal or trough in it.
I know, it's brutal. I will keep it simple. We add a new question every year, and you're going to get the new question. So the first question is, if you had to pick one race car and one racetrack the rest of your life to race at, what do you pick?
One race car at one racetrack.
Yeah, any era, cup car, late model, whatever you want. F1 car.
Well, I don't have any experience in any open wheel car, so it's going to be a stock car. I think for me, I would probably, if it was going to be the early 95, 96, 97 trucks were really fun. The spoilers were really small, didn't have a bunch of downforce, didn't have a bunch of offset. But I would probably go with the cup cars from like the 2000, probably 2000. I guess it would have been 2006, 7, 8, right in there, when they just had all the they had all the power, they had all the downforce, and they just looked
sweet.
That
badass.
Picture of your car, is it Indy?
Over the top.
Over the top.
Yeah, the Elvis car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you run that car at then?
Old Bristol.
Oof.
Yeah.
Old Bristol all day.
Man wants a workout.
Original Bristol.
He's going to be in shape.
But it wasn't a workout when you did it right, because it's just a rhythm. It's just a rhythm. When everything was right and you were sitting in the car right and you just got in that rhythm, you were relaxed and just boom, you'd lose track of where you were on the racetrack, and it was just
yeah,
all about a rhythm.
Love that answer. That's a first. Question number 2, what's the most embarrassed you've been at the racetrack?
Most embarrassed I've ever been at the racetrack. I would probably say the whole Keselowski thing. Like, I don't know what I was thinking there. I know what I was thinking when I kind of pushed him into the fight, and then it caused the chaos. And for me, my mind was, man, we didn't win tonight. We need chaos. I went back into that showman thing. I'm like, we need these guys to be the story, not us being the story that we didn't win tonight. And well, that worked, but it was. I mean, I feel dumb for that.
You gave Jeff Gordon a bloody lip.
Well, I feel dumb for that, but in the end, we made it to Homestead. We didn't win the championship. Kyle came and won the championship, but we needed the story to go elsewhere other than us and being out of contention. And so I've had a lot of those moments where I think about the show and controlling the message. And for me, that was one I wish I could take back.
You left that situation embarrassed?
I didn't at the time, but I look back at it now and I'm like, I don't know. It did exactly what I needed it to do at the time. But
he was playing chess.
Oh, he was playing chess. Well, because if you didn't push him,
chess.
like it was right at the moment of where it was almost diffused. If you didn't like give him that little bit, and then Jeff was like, "I'm back at it."
Yeah. Yeah, and
you got him within reach and distance.
He got a hold of him.
Yeah,
he got a hold of him, and then it was just complete chaos. So it did exactly what I wanted it to do, but it's not the best thing for your kids to find on YouTube to start the fight, right?
Well, I think the Biffle one would probably be worse than that. You just kind of said, "Hey, man, go talk to him."
Yeah, but that I think for me, I don't like that one.
Yeah,
because it did exactly what I wanted it to do, but it's just not. You kind of look childish in that particular instance.
So we got to come up with third question, third season here, Stacking Pennies. I need your help to pick what it's going to be. It's either going to be I'm going to follow the most embarrassing moment at the racetrack with maybe potentially what's your happiest moment at the racetrack, or
that's not fun.
Okay, or your first racing memory.
First racing memory. My first racing memory would probably be the first day that I drove my go-kart. I got a go-kart. I was 5, and I got a go-kart for kindergarten graduation. And I remember it like it was yesterday, being stuck under the barbed wire fence because I got confused on which pedal was which, and I wound up stuck with the barbed wire.
Oh no!
Next to the fence. So that was how my first day in a vehicle went.
Well, you've got a little better since then, I'd say.
I still have my moments.
Well, Kevin Harvick, it's going to be a pleasure strapping up next to you all year. Good luck on the last season. Thanks for coming on Stacking Pennies, bro.
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.